Awesome. We should be recording now. And I see a few more joiners. Welcome. Okay, let's kick off then. Hayley, off you go.
Oh, thank you so much, Tara. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name's Hayley. I work as part of a team at Makers, and I'm really happy to be hosting this event in collaboration with Coding Black Females. A little bit about Makers, if you're kind of new to coding or haven't heard of us before. We run a coding bootcamp. It's a 16-week program where we train people who have come from non-technical backgrounds mostly, who are looking to make their way into the tech industry. There's a few different routes that we offer, but one of the most exciting things that we're offering at the moment is a scholarship in partnership with Coding Black Females, exclusively for Coding Black Females members. And essentially this is a way of doing our full-time coding course completely free of charge. We ran it once last year, and there have been some really great successes. People have gone on to work for Elsevier, one's a coder at the Royal Opera House. There's like a really great range of companies. So if you're looking to get into tech and you'd like to know more about the scholarship opportunity, I'm just going to drop it into the chat right now so you can have a look at that. Sorry if you can hear the noise outside, by the way. Another thing we do at Makers is we offer apprenticeships, also a really great way of getting into tech. This is a way of training and being paid throughout the time that you're training, and then going straight into a job afterwards. We've got a current opening with Resident Advisor. So any music fans out there is a really, really cool one to get involved with. Again, the link's in the chat if you want to have a look. But that's everything about Makers and the opportunities. I really hope you enjoyed today's session led by Khumbo. We're going to be covering HTML, CSS, and it's just really great to get that kind of fundamental understanding. It's used throughout various different roles. So it's a really, really great starting point if you're looking to kind of pick up your technical skills and start building things for yourself. So really hope you enjoyed today. I'll pass over to Tara, and then enjoy the session, everyone.
Thanks, Hayley. So hi everybody, I'm Tara and I am the community and events manager for Coding Black Females. A majority of you are members of the community already, but I know some of you are quite new. But Coding Black Females' mission is to grow the community of Black women within software development and technical roles from entry level all the way through to executive level. And the aim is to remove the barriers to enter the tech industry and progress within those roles. So that's in case you didn't know. Please feel free to message me on Slack or any other, send me an email just to let me know how you found the event. A lot of you that are attending will receive an email just asking for your feedback. So we would love it if you could provide that, just so we know like what's going well, what we could improve, and just to make these events even more greater than they are already. So I'm really excited for the event today. And Khumbo, I'm going to hand over the mic to you. And let's kick this off.
Hi everyone, my name is Khumbo and I'm a front-end developer for a bank. I am in love with programming simply for the reason that anybody can do it. So hopefully in the session, I'm going to give you just the basics of programming, just enough to show you that you can actually program. At the end of the session, you will actually have an activity that you can do, which hopefully helps you feel a bit confident as well. If you don't feel like you're a competent programmer at the end of this 1.5 hour session, that is completely normal. That makes entire sense because this isn't everything. Hopefully this is a nice introduction into programming. In my job, I work with tons of people who have a music background or were teachers in a primary school, that kind of thing. There's tons of different routes into programming, and there's not one type of person that belongs in programming. Pretty much everyone does. And just generally, one reason to do programming is because people need you. We need people exactly like you. Whatever thoughts you have, whatever interests you have, it would be lovely if you were in the room just feeding you ideas, your creativity, anything, any sort of background that you have, any sort of passions that you have, bring them into the room. And I am 100% sure anyone can do it. This is one of those fields that first you can do and have a good career path in, but also you do not need a degree or any other, there's no other barriers of access to it. So hopefully you enjoy it. Even if you don't enjoy the first time, just give it a try, because it's something that you learn. And once you do learn, you're going to have that feeling of something that you've accomplished. As soon as you're able to build something, as soon as you have that spark, you might have some feedback as to whether you want to become a programmer or not. I'm going to start our little session. So first and foremost, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. I am so happy to have you here. It's really brave that you're doing this. It's quite encouraging to know that people want to switch from whatever career they want, or you're just interested in learning what programming is about. It is an amazing first step. Okay, so in our session, we're going to learn by doing. So I'm not going to just be talking to you. We're going to have some portions of this course where you can actually start programming. Programming is one of those things like a language. It's all about practicing it. So don't just look at me. There's going to be some things you can really get your hands dirty and actually practice what you've learned. So this session is going to have our intro, which we're doing right now. We'll be having a little lesson. So this is going to be some things like slides. There's going to be some technical terms that I'm going to be giving to you. It might sound a bit scary, but honestly, the next session where you actually have a coding exercise, it will make a bit more sense. You can actually put some of those things that I've taught you into practice. And hopefully in future, you can practice it a bit more at home and you'll feel a bit more confident doing this programming. Okay, don't panic if you don't feel like you're an HTML CSS expert at the end of this 1.5 hours. You have plenty of time to practice. And like we just mentioned, with makers and coding Black females, it's going to be amazing. If you decided to sign up to the bootcamp, that will also be amazing. It'll be an amazing step to becoming a programmer. Okay, we might skip the section where we say hello. So what's in this course? In this course, we will give you the tools to understand the structure of websites. So we'll focus on 2 main languages, HTML and CSS. So whatever your experience might be with HTML or CSS, please feel free while we're doing this lesson, just tell me if we need to slow down or speed up, or if you have any questions, please 100% stop me at any moment. Because if you have a question, I'm pretty sure somebody else might have the same question, and we don't want to leave anybody behind. Okay, so let me share my screen again. So what are HTML and CSS? So HTML is called a hypertext markup language. It is the structure of every single web page that you see. So it's essentially, it tells you the web page, where do we want text, where do we want a picture, where do we want a link? It's the structure. It controls the layout of the content, provides structure for the web page, and is the fundamental building blocks of every website. So there's tons of things that build off of HTML, but HTML is the basic building blocks of any website that you see. CSS stands for cascading style sheets. So it's the style of the website. It's what makes the website really unique. So it describes things like the colors, the layouts, the fonts, and it works hand in hand with CSS. So it applies to these with HTML. It actually applies to these HTML elements, and it helps with things like when you're working on a big screen, like a computer monitor, versus when you work on your cell phone, you need to change the style and change those different sizes for whatever screen size you're working on. And CSS takes care of that. So first, we're going to be looking at HTML. So the first stage of any website is always HTML. It is the skeleton of all of our web pages. So we have our text, images, buttons, links, anything is written in HTML. And that stands for hypertext markup language. Okay. There we go. And before we actually go into that, I'm going to show you just an example of HTML before we go too deep into it. So I'm going to refresh this BBC website. And when you're on any web page, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, when you're on any web page, you can right click on it. And this is on Windows and Macs. You can right click on it and click inspect. And then you'll see this thing called elements. And all of these elements are an example of HTML. So if you wanted to see a specific element, I could click on this little text here and I could inspect, and I could go ahead and change. I mean, this is not changing it for everyone. We're not breaking the BBC. It's not changing it for everyone. It's just changing it for us temporarily. We could pretty much go on any website and change the text or change things about the formatting of the website by just expanding all of these things. And all of these things are called HTML elements. So this weather is a text element. It's called span. And I could change it to cold. Today's cold. You could go ahead and do this to pretty much any website. All of the structure is how HTML is built. So if I go ahead and hover over anything, you can see it determines where things are positioned. It determines what text is in things. And then down below, we will have in our style sheet, we will have all of the CSS. So this is probably more complicated because BBC have been working on their website for ages, but we will come up with a website that's pretty similar, not the same. Let me just continue presenting there. Okay, so just like I showed you the HTML elements, this is the basic structure of an HTML element. The whole thing is called an element. So this is it's a part of our HTML document, and it's formatted by something called tag. So a tag determines what that element displays. A tag is like the actual content of that element, of that HTML element. So in our case, this tag, this P tag, is called paragraph. It's for paragraph. Most of our paragraphs have a P tag around them. And this is something, it's like a keyword in HTML. As soon as you put a P in HTML and you put these sort of triangular brackets around it, you're telling HTML, this is a tag. This is an HTML tag, which means this is going to be an HTML element that wants me to do a specific thing. So in our case, we have, an opening tag that has P. So we always, most of the time, we're going to start our HTML element with an opening tag. And we're going to end it with a closing tag, a corresponding closing tag. And we know it's a closing tag because it has this / in front of it. So it's surrounded by these closing brackets, angle brackets. Both of them have to be surrounded by the angle brackets, and anything between the opening tag and the closing tag is called the content of the HTML element. In this case, the content is text saying hello world. So this would display as any other paragraph similar to this, but that paragraph would show hello world. So this is the part where I'll be showing you a bunch of technical stuff, but don't worry, we'll have a second afterwards to practice this technical stuff. So don't worry if you don't get anything, just try to maybe follow along as much as you can, but we will have a time to practice what we learn. So when we actually open an HTML document, you don't have to remember all of this, but essentially when we open an HTML document, like we will in our code sandbox, every document will have the same thing already built in, which is going to be the document type. And this is just saying that my document type is HTML, because it's usually trying to specify the version of HTML. If you don't specify it, it just goes to the latest version of HTML, which is HTML5. We also have this opening tag and this closing tag of HTML, and anything within this is called a child of that element. So HTML is the parent element of head, and head is the child element of HTML. So anything that's contained within this opening and closing tag are the children of HTML, And usually when you have an HTML document, you have it entirely surrounded by HTML because you're just telling your computer, this is an HTML language text. Okay. By the way, you'll have these slides available to you, or you'll have it through the recording so you can look at these in a bit more detail. And we have this head component. So this head component has all of the information about our web page that we don't want the user to see. So this is just everything that's not visible. And we also have this body tag, which is everything that we do want the user to see. So it's going to be all of the text and the images and the buttons that we want the user to see is going to be within this body tag. So just like we had our paragraph element, we're going to have headings elements. And these heading elements are denoted by just this letter H. H tells us it's a heading element, which is just maybe you would have on the title of your web page in a heading. And it goes from H1 to H6, which H1 is the biggest heading. So it might be, yes, the name of your web page, and then the subtitle might be in H2, and then it goes so on and so forth. Maybe a section title is going to be H3, that kind of thing. I'll show you how this looks in a second. But in this case, breaking news is going to be the biggest part of your page. It's going to be the biggest text. And then this is going to be a subheading and the smaller subheading, and it goes down from H1 to H6. Please feel free to stop me at any moment. I will be checking the chat a bit regularly. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop it there as well. And I will make sure I answer those, because I don't want you to be left behind or to feel like this is going too quickly, okay? Okay, we've actually discussed this paragraph element. It's just essentially a block of text. We also have this div element, which in HTML, it doesn't actually show anything. What it's useful for is dividing things in your page. So while you're writing all of your HTML, maybe you want to divide things into different sections, then you would use this div element, which also has an opening tag and a closing tag, and you contain as many different elements within it as you want. We have a strong element, which you might think of as the equivalent of bold. So it helps to highlight important, serious, or urgent text. You would usually use a strong element within a paragraph. So if you wanted something bolded in that paragraph, you could use strong. We also have something called an unordered list. Please stop me as well, by the way. Stop me if there's anything that you listen. Okay, great. So we have this unordered list element, which is used to create a list that is just doesn't need an order. So it might be something like bullet pointed list. So as a parent element, you would have the unordered list. And as its children, you would have this thing called list items. By the way, there's a lot of, it seems like there's a lot of like code letters, code words here. There is an amazing documentation online that tells you what each thing means. So if you're trying to create something, it's very easy to just search online how to create a list in HTML, something like that. So in our case, this is an unordered list, and you would have list items as children of that. And all of these will be displayed as bullet points. And this may not make much sense, but the contrasting thing is an ordered list. So an ordered list is almost the opposite of that one. Now our list items, which is, it's also going to be list items as a child, but this time it will actually have numbers associated to it because it's an ordered list. So instead of having bullet points, it would have 1, 2, 3 next to it. So these are things that might be used in a web page just to display a bunch of information. And since HTML is essentially the structure of the web page, the text, the build of it, it doesn't have that flair. Once we get to CSS, you're going to see that flair of like actually adding colors and things that make it look interesting. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to actually switch over very quickly to get to, before we go to our attributes, I'm going to just go through some of the things we've discussed in HTML, but we're going to be doing that in Code Sandbox. So if everybody could open the Code Sandbox. If you don't have a link to it, I'll give you about a minute. I'm sending the link in the chat. This is the website you need to go to, Code Sandbox, and create an account. While everyone's creating an account, do you have any questions on what we've done so far? How many elements exist in total? That is a really good question. There's this reference manual, which is amazing, and I suggest you check it out while you're doing any HTML work. It lists pretty much every HTML element. I don't know how many exist in total, but this is very useful for if you want to search how to use a different, how to use a specific element. So if you go through here, it lists a bunch. You probably won't need all of these elements. The main ones you would need are like H1s, paragraphs, an image element, that kind of thing. Here's a list item. And if you, for instance, let's go look at that paragraph we discussed. So paragraph is just P. If you open it up, and if your computer is a bit faster, it would actually be implemented. So you can just run it and save it instead of saving it here. You can just run your, and then you can just see an example of how that element is used. If you want to go here and just search for a keyword maybe, or even search Google. I think one of the most underrated things that programmers know how to do is Google. It is an entire skill because you cannot memorize every single tag that exists. So sometimes you have to Google a bit and describe what you're looking for in nice detail. You don't see an option to see the code. What step have you missed? That's amazing. So I'm going to go for a website we're on right now. So you would right click. So let me get this a bit higher. You would right click and click this item, inspect. So you should have something on like inspect. If you're on Windows, it should be Control-Shift-I. Jude, have you had any luck? So I went, so just double click there. I went to inspect and I right clicked on my computer. No luck, you're on a Mac. So on a Mac, it should be just simply, I'm also on a Mac. So if you go to a web page, you right click, do you see the option to see inspect, this little inspecting at the bottom of the list? You'd feel free to as well unmute yourself and I can have a little chat.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So when I right click, I've just got like 4 options: back, reload page, save page as, and print page. I don't have that big list like what you've got there.
Are you on Google Chrome?
I'm on Safari.
That might be why.
Okay.
Once you can get Google Chrome onto your, of course, yes. Any chance you can get Google Chrome onto your computer. I think that's, it's not ideal that it doesn't work on everything, but I think Google Chrome is probably the best tool for developers.
Okay.
I would be happy to send you, I'm sure there's a way to run Safari. Safari.
That's fine. I've got Google Chrome, so I'll open that and give it a go. Thank you.
No problem at all. So there's actually some information online for viewing dev tools. Oh, yes. Okay, so you would have to go to your advanced settings and preferences, and then you can show develop menu in menu bar. So if you were using Safari by any chance, I'm just going to send you this link, but you shouldn't need to. Okay. You have, everybody's on Code Sandbox, I'm hoping. So we're going to go ahead and create a sandbox. So that's in the top right corner. We're going to create a sandbox. And we're going to use static. So static is, this symbol as well, is just a very basic HTML thing. And it essentially sets up a lot of those things for you so that you can just go ahead and write your HTML. So I created a sandbox and I'm going to use static as my sandbox option. So this part, I'm just going to do a bit of a demo for you. If you are happy to, feel free to follow along. If you want to just sit back and watch, if you'd rather just see me doing it, you will have an opportunity to play around with it yourself right afterwards. So either way. So it should take you to a place here. This is exactly what I mentioned to you, which is we have this thing called doc type, which we just say it's HTML. We have this HTML tag. We have a head tag, which contains all of the information we don't want our user to see, such as the metadata and the title of our web page. By the way, this is on the right here in Code Sandbox. It actually has your web page that you're building right now. So you can continually save and then it will update your web page for you. You can also go, if you want to build something and then show your family and friends, you can just go ahead and paste this here. And it is actually a website you can share with other people. So you can just go ahead and edit it, do whatever you'd like, build your own personal web page or anything that you'd like, and you should have a link to share with other people. So in our head tag, we have something called, in our head tag, in our head elements, we have a child called title. All this title does is it tells you what's going to be shown in the tag here, in the tab. So when you open up that page in a tab, it shows what the head element is going to have. We have our body. So our body is where we want to show the users. Anything that we want to show the users, we're going to place right here in our body. So what's already pre-built here is an H1 heading tag, which is the biggest and boldest heading at the top level. So I might want to name this something a bit better, like Khumbo's website. And I'm just going to either Command S if you're on a Mac or Control S if you're on a Windows, and save this. There we go. Okay, great. So I'm going to show you a few more examples of how HTML tags might look like. So we have our H1 element. I also maybe want something that's smaller. Maybe something called H2. So what I did there was, first thing, I opened up my brackets, and then I typed the name of my tag, which in my case is going to be H2, which is heading 2. And then I always have to close that opening tab. And then again, I'm going to, first thing, I always like to open and close my tag immediately, because you might forget to close the tag and then your website is screaming at you for no reason. So make sure you close it first thing. So I'm going to go ahead and have those brackets again. I'm going to do a / of H2 here, and I'm going to close that closing tag. So now I have a second heading, and I'll say, this is my blog. And I'm going to save that by doing Command S or Control S. So you can see immediately, this is smaller than this. I'm going to go ahead and show you a few other levels of tags. Oh. So I have my H1, H3. I'm just putting text inside of it just to say which text I want to display in this element. And then a bit more. So you can see what I mean. By the way, if you just start this, it kind of, Code Sandbox knows how to predict what you might do. So it knows that you might close. So if I want to use that, I'll just press enter. And so you can see all my different levels of headings that might exist. They're all bolded because they're all headings. make sure when you put, if you decide to follow me along, you don't have to, but just generally, if you want it to appear on the web page, make sure you're doing it within this body element. So within the opening and the closing of this body element. And when you have something that's going to be automatically formatted, what it does is it tries to make sure that the indent, like how indented this list is, follows the structure. So since this is a child of this, it needs to be indented more. And if I had another child, it would be indented more and more. So I might have a paragraph. So this is my paragraph opening, same thing as any other tag. I'll have a P. I'll close that. Make sure to close my paragraph off. And then I can put whatever text I want within my paragraph. And make sure I save that. So you can see this paragraph actually isn't bolded because it isn't a heading. So it knows that it doesn't need to be bolded. It's automatically styled in a certain way. So we might have a paragraph here, but let's say, for instance, I wanted to bold the word coding because I want people to pay attention to it. I would use that element. So now I'm actually creating something that's a child of paragraph. And I'm putting in that strong element. So strong just says, I want this word that's between these brackets or between my opening and closing tag to be stronger than the rest or bolder than the rest. And we can immediately see that adjustment's bolded on. Okay. So I could also have another paragraph here that potentially has, what if I wanted something to be in italics? I could go here and say, there's another tag that I haven't mentioned yet, which is just EM. It just means I want this part of my word to be in italics. So I opened and I closed. This is the child of my paragraph. I go ahead and save that. It's going to show me this text, but this bit of the text will be in italics. Okay. So there's all different amazing cool things you can do. So let me go a bit on. So these are my headings. These are my paragraphs. What if I want, something to be in my code, but I want it to just be a note to myself? I don't want my users to be able to see this. I could have a comment, and the way to do a comment, you don't need a tag this time. You just need kind of similar opening brackets, but this time you do an exclamation mark, and then it'll automatically fill, and you can say my comments. So this bit here isn't visible to the users, but it is visible to you when you read in your code. So you might want to add like information about what you did, or just kind of summary of what you did. You might want to have that all contained in your comments. And when I save that, the heading is going to appear in my code, but this line of my comments will not appear in my code because it's just a comment. Okay. I want your questions coming in at any moment. Tell me if there's any questions or if anybody wants to unmute themselves. How do you have a gain? Tasha, I don't quite understand you. Oh, how do you save a game? So it's either either Command S if you're on a Mac, or Control S if you're on a Windows.
Hi, sorry, got one
Hi.
question.
Yeah.
You know about the comments bit, so I just missed the bit where how you make that bit invisible just for you. So I can see obviously you put it inside a header, a header. Am I right saying the right word? Oh
Yeah,
no,
that's right.
heading, yeah, H1 tag, and then obviously you've got my comments underneath. So how did you make it invisible again?
So this part is just actually labeling it. So when you were trying to do a comment,
Yeah.
So I'm just going to remove this comments thing because it's not necessary. So when you're trying to do a comment, you would do that triangular bracket, that angle bracket, whatever it's called. You would do an exclamation mark and then 2 dashes.
Yes, exclamation mark and 2 dashes.
That's it. And then, yeah, you can add whatever you want within here and it won't appear in the code. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
No problem at all. No problem at all. So you have opening and closing tags just because there's in this, let me show you here. So you have to have opening and closing tags because when there's so much HTML, things can get confusing. Like often you do have the case of something is a child of something, and then that has a child, and that has a child, and that has a child infinitely. So without opening and closing tags, you wouldn't know how to contain that structure. You wouldn't know what's a child of what, or if I just had this out on its own, if I just had italics out on its own, it may not display it as a paragraph because it might think it's associated to a heading or a list or something. So we have these opening and closing tags just to kind of structure our web page, saying this belongs to this section and this one has to be under this section. This one has, it's kind of like a sorting into different bits of our code and bits of the page as well. Because I might want to apply something to my entire body. And if I didn't have this, I wouldn't know where my body ended. I'd know where it started, but I wouldn't know where it ended. So we need a closing tag to say this is where my body ends. And I might have a paragraph that contains a ton of elements. This can exist as well. I could have a paragraph that contains tons of elements. And if I didn't have this paragraph, I wouldn't know when that section of the paragraph ends. It's a really good question, though. It's a really, really good question. It does seem like it slows things down. Some things that all of these elements actually have children, which is why we need to know when they start and close, when they begin and end. But there is an element that I haven't yet mentioned to you, which is an image tag. And an image tag looks like this. I'll explain it a bit more to you. An image tag, which is img, it just does this and it self-closes. This is called self-closing when you just have the / here. Because an image tag is never going to have children, it's never going to have like text within it or something. It just closes itself. So some of our elements are actually self-closing. So they don't need the opening and closing tag. They're quite quick to code. Okay, so I'm going to go back. So now that we've done that, I'm going to continue. I remember where I stopped. So we've gone through all of our headings. We've gone through our divs. We've gone through our strong. We haven't gone through. Okay, we'll go through our list items. I really like some lists. We have something called attributes. So I just showed you our image elements, and you can imagine if I just put an image element there and I didn't tell it what image I wanted to display, that would be a problem. So we have this thing called attributes, which just gives you more information to the element to tell us specific information. So as an example, this element doesn't exist, but imagine if you had an element called pizza, you might have, for that element, you might have different attributes such as size, crust, and type. So this is just giving that the computer, giving it more information about how you want this HTML element to present in the code or in your web page. So a pizza might have an attribute. This is called an attribute, size, and the value of the attribute might be large. Might have another one called crust, and the value might be thin. And it might have another attribute called type, and the value might be pepperoni. So what essentially attributes are the different options for each of our tags. So we don't necessarily want every paragraph to look the same or every image to contain the same picture. We want them to have different things. So we would give those elements an attribute to describe what those different things might be. So it's always in this format. We would have, this is usually contained in the opening tag. So you would never have all of this extra stuff in your closing tag. It's always going to be described in the opening tag. And in the case of an image, there is no opening and closing tag. There's just one tag. So it'll be just there next to it. You would have the tag, the attribute name, and the attribute value. Okay. Let's see what else you have to learn. So we have something called an anchor element. So it can create hyperlinks to different parts of the same HTML document using an href attribute. So in this case, we have something called an anchor link, which you can just think of as a link. It's just used to perhaps link to a different web page entirely. So Facebook might link to Instagram or something, or it's used to link to a different place in the document. So you might want to, at the beginning, you might want to say, contact me, and then that immediately links to the bottom of your page where you have your contact me details. This is just essentially linking you to different parts. So the tag name is A, and its attribute is href. And you just put in whatever you need there, which is maybe a different web page, maybe a different part of your page, that kind of thing. We'll show you an example of that as well. And here is the image element, which embeds images in our document. And that one has an attribute src, which means source. It just says, where is my source of my image? And it is this empty, it's called an empty element, which means it doesn't actually need a closing tag because it self-closes itself. And here, almost exactly the same. Your source can be within your document, or your source can be an image on a website. Okay, might just stop there. Okay, I'm going to stop there and we're going to go through some of those. So we haven't been through lists yet. So I might have an unordered list. You all are experts right now on how to open and close an element, but just for the sake of it, I'm going to close my bracket and then close my unordered list. And it has these children called list items. So that's list items li. They need an opening and a closing as well. And this needs an opening and closing because it can be a paragraph. It could be a paragraph with bolded letters. It can be it can be anything. So my unordered list is just going to display as bullet points because I don't need it to have an order because all of these things are equal to me. So pizza is equal to me as a South African dish called biltong. It's also equal to me as candy. So when I save that, you will see a list of all of these things that are equal to me because they don't need to have an order. So this is, I first created my unordered list. You can't just have a list item by itself. It needs to have a parent that's either an ordered list or unordered list. While you're coding as well, just hover above these things. They give you amazing bits of information about what you're coding. This is just the documentation. So here you'll see an unordered list element represents a list of items where the order of the items is not important. That is where changing the order would not materially change the meaning of the document. So if you just hover above them, they might give you a bit more information about what you're doing. And in contrast to that, I do have an order, so an ordered list of my favorite animals. So I would list them exactly the same, but now the order actually matters. So it matters which order I list them in. So I would say, oh, almost forgot to close. Always need to close first. Elephant. Solid number 1 for my favorite animals. I would have dogs. There we are. And then I would have flowers, something like that, okay? And then when I save that, I can look at my items, but instead of in an unordered list, we have them as without order, just bullet points, because it doesn't matter. In an ordered list, we have them as 1, 2, 3, because whichever order you put them in does matter. Okay. Let's go on. What did we go through next? So as well, let's say if you wanted to link to the BBC. So we have the page for the BBC. We had let's say a paragraph element where we're just going to randomly put a hyperlink inside. So we say there the BBC. So in this case, I want to put that anchor element. So anchor element is A. And then I'm going to open and close it. So we have that anchor element. But this time, because the anchor it's a link element, it doesn't know where it wants me to, I don't know where I want to link to. So I'm going to just have an href here. By the way, if you're curious about what attributes exist for each element, just go ahead and go to A. It says it defines a hyperlink, and then it'll just tell you which information you need for each bit of it. So it says, these are all of the attributes it can have, but the only necessary one is an href attribute. The most important one is an href. So href for me is just that link that I want to go to. So where am I going to? I would say href, which is the name of my attributes, equals to, and then I put in quotation marks. So double or single quotation marks, that's completely fine. And I would say href equals, and then I can just go ahead and copy this link to the BBC. And then I'm going to put in however I want that link to display within my app. In my case, I want it to show as BBC. Yeah, I'm just going to add in one more attribute, because if I just try to click it like this, what it does is it tries to open up within my app. So I'm going to add another attribute, which is called target. And that target is going to be blank. So that target being blank, so this is just another attribute that I really want to add in because I want it to open up to not within my document, but another place. And I'm going to save that. And then when I open that up, it's going to open up to the BBC. So I can even look at that in my actual, if I refresh this page, it's going to show my website. And there is very important information that exists on the BBC. And I click that and it opens to that very important information on the BBC. So if you ever wanted to link to, like, let's say you had a personal website and you're trying to link to your Instagram account, or you're trying to link to Facebook or your LinkedIn page, you could just have a link directly to those pages, but you can have it nice and smooth within your document so that nobody even notices it's a link. Any questions about that? Well, that's quite a bit of information. Okay. I'm gonna
sorry, yeah, sorry. Can you just go back to how the link appears on the website? So I can see that href gives you the reference for the website, and then what is it? Is it target?
So target blank, that's what I put in as mine.
Target, oh, blank, okay.
So let me actually show you. So I'm going to put this on the next line just so that we have it a bit clearer. So I've put in this anchor element, which is element A. So if it has an href, then it represents a hyperlink labeled by its content. So I put this attribute href. I put the equals to, and I put the value of that href, which is just the value of my link. And just to make sure that it opens up on a different web page, I put another attribute called target. And that equals to my value underscore blank. And then within this opening, so by the way, so this is how attributes show. attributes are always in the opening tag, not in the closing tag. And within these, the opening and the closing tag, I have whatever text I want it to appear as in my document. Okay. Is that okay?
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you for that. If there's anything else very similar to that, if you need me to repeat something or actually just show something properly on my screen, I'm here for that. Okay. We're going to go over to our image tag zone. So we have that amazing little image tag. And like I mentioned to you before, we've been doing a lot of opening and closing and opening and closing. This is a specifically unique one because it doesn't need closing. It closes itself by just doing, like all of our closing tags have open the bracket, / and then the tag name. This one will have open, tag name, and then you just close it by doing a / and a bracket. And that's our image. That's how our image would be, but not too, we don't have enough information because we need to tell it what its attributes are going to be. Essentially, where is this image going to come from? So we're going to put in that source, which in our case is src, as our attribute name. And then we're going to equal, so just assigning our attribute name to this value. And I'm going to search. Okay, so I've just Googled, very important thing here, cute dogs. That's a solid cute dog. I'm going to copy this link address. And as my image source, I'm going to place that here. It doesn't like that. Let me go actually go into it. So this is just linking me to Good House Breeding, Good Housekeeping, whatever that's it. So I'm going to actually go here and make sure that I actually copy the link for the image. And paste this. So this is actually now the image rather than what before was just the web page. And this is a very huge image of a very cute dog. So you can do this pretty much for any images. If I had saved this image and it was in my folder, so you can actually have your folder on an external server like it is here. But if I were to save this image instead, let me do that. And yeah, if I were to save it and actually have it within my document, the way I would refer to it is just by having a / and then just saying whatever it's saved as, image name.jpg. And that will do the exact same thing. It will just link to the image, whether the image is here or the image is somewhere online. Okay. And yeah, so we won't be going through buttons today because we don't really need to. So yeah, I think that is it for us. So I'm going to show you, I want you to go to this web page. This is our actual HTML. Oh, is there any way to make the link shorter? So because that exists on somebody else's server, we just need to link to their server, whatever link description that they have, unfortunately. If we linked it on our personal servers, or if we listed it within our code, then it wouldn't be a problem. You could just have a very short link. But because it's somebody else on some Good Housekeeping server, we need to use the link they provide us, fortunately. That's really good. It doesn't look great on code, but the users are not seeing it, so thank God. I want you all to go to this web page. So this is my code sandbox. And I want you to please fork this. So this is the top right. I want you to click fork. And you're on one of these sites that I have, but don't save anything, don't do anything yet. Just make sure that you go ahead and fork. And what forking is doing is it's making a copy of this web page onto your code sandbox. Okay. Okay, I'm also going to ask you to do one more thing for me, which is going in the top right of your screen here, going to Preferences, open VS Code settings. So there we are, top right of our screen, Preferences, go to VS Code settings, and then just start typing formats on save. And yours should look like this. Make sure that it is unclicked for our purposes. Just make sure that your format on save is unclicked. So the first thing I did was I just forced that link that I sent to you in the chat. So that's just making a copy of it on your web page. You should have the same name here, but just fork in brackets. And then I went and clicked on these three. I went to Preferences. I went to Open VS Code settings. I started typing formats on. And I went to this format on save option and I unticked it. Anyone having difficulty there? Great, great. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and close that tab. And here are instructions if anybody needs, so we have this instructions.md file. If anybody needs anything to be referred back to, please go ahead to these instructions, especially if you're working on this by yourself at home. For now, I'm going to this file called index.html. So within this file, there is some nice, lovely HTML text, but there's also stuff that isn't HTML text. And I'm hoping for this web page to create something that looks very similar to this. So I wanted to have all the headings, all the paragraphs, all the bolded letters, what are these called? The lists that this one has. You probably don't need to do this last bit because it's a table. If you want to do it at home, there is lovely HTML references on how to have a table inside your app. So if you go to table row, table heading, that kind of thing, but you probably don't need to do that for now. For now, I would just love it if everybody could edit this web page so that it looks very similar to this one. So how you would do that is going to your index.html file, just erasing this hashtag because it doesn't need to be there. Going ahead and doing the h1 tag that I showed you, closing that, surrounding it. So our web page knows that this is an h1, a heading 1 document, and just saving. Hopefully it shouldn't format everything badly. So just save it there and it should come up closer to our solution. And we'll do that for about 10 minutes. I don't expect you to finish this in 10 minutes at all. I don't even know if I could finish this in 10 minutes, but this is just a good start for you. So we're going to this index.html file, and we're just editing all of these different things. So instead of being just text that shows up like this, which doesn't look great, we want it to be HTML. And but we want it to look like an HTML like this. There is a part about the HTML where you need to show a picture. That picture is just here for you in this. And I mentioned to you that if you want to show an image that is local to you, you just open your image. You would have a source. And that source would equal, you can just press enter on that essentially. That source would equal that. Okay. Please continue. I'll just have this open anyone's reference. I don't think I can zoom out. No, can't zoom out. But I'll just have this open for anyone's reference. And we'll stop this at around 22.
Hi.
Yeah.
Is it possible to see what we're trying to get to?
Of course. So what you're trying to get to is in your folder. So what you're trying to get to is in this internet solution PNG. So you want something that looks like it.
Okay, cool. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
If you want them on different screens, you might want to open the sandbox on 2 different locations. If you have any questions throughout, feel free to pop them in and I'll answer them. So just a reminder to access the file, we'll just have to go to this link that I sent in the chat. So let's go to this link that I sent in the chat and click fork. So on the top right, just click fork to make a copy of that file in your own Flow Sandbox. So to make a copy of the file, just go to the top right-hand corner and click fork. And then you will know that it's a copy. So yeah, you'll know that it's a copy because it's still going to be called HTML and CSS exercise, but it's going to have forked in brackets next to it. Anyone stuck on anything that I can help with?
Hi, I'm stuck on the, can you hear me? Sorry. Yeah, I'm stuck on the website URL, like putting that in.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're trying to put in.
Facebook.com and BBC from that exercise.
Yeah. So how is it going? So have you been able to add that anchor tag?
Yeah, I did the Ahref thing, but what it did is when I tried to close it, putting the you know, the slash and then the A, it's just highlighted, it's just given that URL to the whole of the text now.
URL to the whole of the text. Okay.
Yes, yeah, rather than just bbc.co.uk.
That makes sense. Okay, so is this a tag, the opening tag? Is it just before the BBC text?
It should be. So if I let me try that again. Yeah, so you know, in the exercise it's like EG and then it's www.facebook.com. So
Yeah.
I've done that. I'm doing the Ahref now, and then the equal sign,
Yeah.
and
So
then yeah,
oh,
sorry.
would you be willing to share your screen by any chance?
Yeah,
Or
one second.
if you don't share it, you can just maybe send that line of code to me.
I can't share when you're sharing.
That makes sense. There we go.
Okay. Can you see where I am?
Yes, I can see it. So you just, all you need there is you need quotation marks around your Facebook.
Right.
There you are.
And then just that one, yeah.
Exactly. And then you don't need that comma. What do you have after that comma?
That's the BBC website.
That
So
makes it.
yeah, no,
So
sorry.
no, that makes entire sense. So do you want the text to be BBC?
So in the exercise, I think you've got both links highlighted. So yeah.
That makes entire sense. So let's work through that. Actually, let me get to that place.
Okay.
So I want you to let me share my screen again.
Okay, thank you. All right. And I'll stop. Oh, how do I? Whoops. Okay, here we go.
There we go.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so I want these two, that might have been a bit confusing. Sorry about that. I want these to be separate links. So let me share my screen there. So I want one link that has the text facebook.com and I want another link that has the text bbc.com. So how I might do that is, I've lost it again. That's interesting. There we go. So I might do an A tag here. I want my href. So in this case, I do want my href and my text to be facebook.com. So I'll do equals, have those quotation marks. Oh, I get what you mean. So you were in the midst of doing it, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. And then I'm gonna just do this. And then I'm gonna have both the text and the thingamajiggy. Okay, great. And that's how that might look. It's going to have the A tag. This is going to be my link, my href, and then I'm going to have the text as this. And then I'm going to close it and I'm going to do the exact same thing for BBC.
All right, so you did it again. Okay, you just so you posted the link again after the quotation marks.
Yeah, I think
okay.
what a website might usually have is just to have only the text Facebook. It doesn't necessarily have to have the text and the both of the things aligned, but yeah, this one is only if you want it to display as facebook.com, like www.facebook.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. I'll give you all another minute on that. That's a really good question. we're going to continue, and I really apologize for this. I know it's not a great amount of time to be able to practice that, but I'm encouraging you all to just take that home and work a bit more on it. You can. The next thing we're going to be doing is actually going to be building on what you're already doing. So hopefully you will still use this website and you can still build on it. But what we're going to be adding on is something called CSS, which I mentioned to you is the style of our components. So CSS brings style to the HTML. So it brings the fonts, the colors, the themes. It'll give your website that unique feel. And we know that having a plain text website like we had with just our HTML is not very interesting. And probably that looks like something from the 80s. So yeah, CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. I've already included, so in that web page that you have, the first document that you open doesn't have this, but the second one that you forked off of does have this. We need to link our HTML and CSS so that our HTML file knows that this is the styling that I want to apply to it. And the way that we would do that is with this line here. You 100% do not have to remember this line. All this line is doing is within that head component. Remember, the head is not the stuff that the user sees, it's just information about the website. We would say we're linking this this relation style sheets. And the href of the style sheet is just styles.css, which if you look in your folders, you will see a file called styles.css. All we're saying there is this is the file that I want to use to be able to add styles to my document. And how we write CSS. So I mentioned CSS is all about the styles. So when we have our styles.css file, we would have a similar structure to this. This H1 here is called the selector. And what the selector is doing is saying to all of my H1 tags inside of my HTML document, apply the style to it. So a selector is, like it's describing, it's just a way of selecting something. It's just a way of selecting parts of your HTML document to add a font color or a font size or a background color. It is just saying only to these elements do that. And pretty much anything that is an HTML tag can be used as a selector. So you could say, I want to apply something to my entire body. And then obviously your entire body is everything that the user sees, which means that you're applying this kind of style to your entire body of your website. These are our properties. So our properties, there's just like we have an HTML tag guide, we have a really good CSS guide for all of our CSS properties. But examples of some are like background color, you could have a value red. Border, this is 1 pixel. This is how computers measure sizes, it's just in pixels. So like your computer screen might have might have 1980 pixels across. And that's how it measures the size. So color would mean the color of the text. Your H1's text color could be white, and you might want to align your text to center. So these are just examples of CSS properties that would apply to an HTML element. And they work hand in hand. You want to apply CSS properties to elements that exist. You don't want to, if you stay on this course, it'll be amazing. But there's way more ways of adding selectors so that you can be way more specific about what you want to apply the style to. I have created, in hindsight, this is an awful slide. But what I tried to do was create something that shows you common CSS properties. So color is a property that might, apply to a text. It might apply to the text color. You can have something called margin or padding, which just says how much distance you want between yourself and the next element. So you can just say you can have a paragraph that you want it to be like, I don't know, 5 pixels from the side. You don't want it to be exactly on the side of the screen. So you might have padding or a margin. You could have a background color. If you had like a border, you could have a border, like a blue border around your piece of text or around your image. And you can also curve that border so it looks a bit nicer. Then you'd have a border radius. You can align your text to the left or align it to the right or align it center or justify it the same way you could do with Word. You could have a very big font size, very small font size, anything that you want. You're not restricted by HTML in your font sizes. And yeah, you can have that background. Yeah, you can have a background to your image or background to your entire web page. Okay, so the same web pages you all already have because you've just forked it off here. You will see in my head here, which is just all the information for my website. I've included this bit of text that says, this is a link to my styles.css file. And the relation to this is it's my style sheet for this file. And if I go to the styles, so where we're going to put all of our CSS is in this .css file. I have, this is not how a .css file looks, it's usually blank. But I've decided to just add in a few starters for different selectors that you might have, which is just your A tag might be one selector. Maybe you want to apply a specific style to your A tag. Like in my A tag, maybe I want, by the way, it's all American, so you need to actually have like color spelled out. And you might want to have the text color as black. So if I didn't want my hyperlink to be in blue, like most hyperlinks are, if I didn't want the default, I could add color black to it, and that will get rid of the get rid of that text color. Or I could make my entire body blue, or I could make my heading have a background color. Yeah, you can have background color, and that could be red. This is not going to look great, but we go. I could have my body have a background color red. So I don't think I've sent these to you yet, but I'm going to make sure. So this is the HTML reference guide. And this is the CSS reference guide. So CSS reference guide, hopefully when you just go through these, hopefully it explains itself. You're probably not going to use the majority of these things, but it is useful to have. Like you might have, a border around your body. Oh, 1 pixel. And because the body goes all the way to the edge, that's not very clear, is it? But right now there is actually a border of 1 pixel around the body, or I could have it around the H1 tag. When you all add a bit more information to your document or around my image or whatever, when you add a bit more HTML to this document, you can use all of the selectors that you decided to come up with. Like maybe you want your list elements to, be a different color or be a different font or anything. You could just go ahead here. I've pre-filled this in. If you have any other elements that you've added in, please feel free to just, this is your selector. You would open those curly brackets, and then you would put in anything that you want to be here. So that's putting in the property name, putting a colon, and then putting whatever value you want it to be. Okay. Yep. Okay, so you all, I'd love you to do that on your current web pages. I have now sent you the CSS reference, so have a look for anything that is possible within your web pages. I will also have this on my screen just to give you some ideas. Whether you want a background, a color, border, anything that you want. So Gemma, you asked, are these properties common when adapting H1 text? So are you thinking about the CSS properties?
Yes, I am. So, you showed your example and you had color,
Yeah.
can't remember the other ones. Yes, so you had like border, color, text alignment. Are those like the common 4 things that you might want to adjust to your H1 tag?
This one is kind of creative, it's up to you. So this, you could apply this to pretty much, you can apply these to any tag that you want. it doesn't have to be, and these are not the ones that you need for your H1. You can add a bunch of things to H1. You don't even have to specify this for your H1. You might like, this is kind of, I mean, HTML can be quite creative too, but CSS is where it's completely creative, just how you want things to look. So these are common properties. Yeah, they are common properties that you might use throughout your file, but not just for H1. You can use it for your paragraphs and everything else.
Okay. Yeah, because I think I was just wondering, because obviously we, just like HTML, we don't know all the different elements, and that, I suppose the same on CSS. We don't know all the different things that we can adapt. So I was just wondering whether this is like, right, so I'm doing my H1, and then I want you usually want to change the color, the background, the size, and where it's entered, those kind of things. And I'm thinking, so is that like a good starting place for when you want to style up your H1?
Yes. This one, hopefully, okay, so it's an awful slide. I know it about myself, but I kind of like it still. These properties are common properties. These, I don't know how many I've put here, 10 or something properties. These ones are the common ones you might want to change, which is the color. I'm going to write here a bit clearer. I'm going to write this as background color, and this is how it would look. Color, background. So all of these are the common properties and exactly how you would see them in your HTML text. So yeah, these ones I think are a good guide for things that you might want to change.
Okay, yeah, that's useful. Thank you.
No problem at all. I'm just going to make it look like exactly how you would look in your. So usually, we in HTML and CSS, we like starting with small letters. So I'm just going to change everything to small letters. And our actual properties here are margin and padding. Okay, and text line, yeah, these are your common properties that you might want to think about changing.
Sorry, I have a question.
Of course.
You see the A selector.
Mm-hmm.
When I type mine, the little square doesn't pop up with the color I want.
So that would be okay. So that little square popping up is not a common thing across all code. It's just what's called IntelliSense, which just tries to predict what you might want. Here, there might be a very good list of colors. Alternatively, like here, you can put in any single color that you want. So I'm gonna look for. So which color are you looking for specifically? Maybe I can help you with that.
So I wanted yellow for my A selector.
I think you should be able to do that. Just type in yellow and it will come. You don't actually have to use that box. That box is just a nice tool that might help you code faster or might help you know that you're doing the right thing, but just type in the, are you looking for the actual color yellow?
Yeah, I don't get the drop down menu with the options. Nothing, it doesn't change my code in any way.
It doesn't change your code in any way. I think there might be, would you be willing to share your screen as well?
Oh, so I'm watching you on my tablet and then I have.
That's completely fine. Would you be able to send, so I think what's happening is, because you've never used Code Sandbox before, I don't think it's something with your settings. I think that there might have been, did you change anything about how you have this? Or did you change anything about how it inserts your style sheets at the top here?
Right, let me see.
I think you haven't changed anything.
But I'm happy to just like cancel everything and just open the link again if that might help.
It might help. Are you sure you have, I mean, you can fork 2 different versions of it as well. So I think just for nice speed, yeah, please do that because I think it's having difficulty actually selecting. So that might mean that the link between here and here is broken. or it might mean that something has, like, maybe you've dropped a bracket. Are you getting any errors in your code?
No, nothing.
It's just not coming up with the yellow. Did you spell color with an OU?
Yeah.
That's going to be the one then.
Oh wait, no, sorry. I meant to say no, I didn't. No.
You didn't. Oh, okay. I am not entirely sure, but if you actually so you're watching me on your
On my tablet, and I'm coding on another screen. But I think I'll try the link again, and I'll get back if that doesn't work. Thank you.
No problem at all. Is anyone having a similar issue?
Yeah, I am having a similar issue as well. I think it's not changing the it worked when I did it for H1, but when I tried to do it for H2, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And you're sure you have an H2 tag inside your document?
Wait, let me have a look. That's good. Where would the H2 tag? Oh no, there is not a H2 tag.
That might be a
There you
course.
go. Okay, I see.
There might be another course. So yeah, so all of these selectors are using something that you have within your document.
Right.
So the reason I specifically didn't add styles to the rest of these is because I know I don't have them in my document yet. So maybe you'd like to do the HTML section, or if you want to do CSS, do it on the tags that you do have. And then if you have a chance to work on it at home, make sure that you complete the assignment and then
Right.
be able to add it to everything else.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much.
Yep, that's worked for me.
That's the same for you. Okay, good.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get to that solution, but I'm glad it works. Okay, we have only another minute left. I know it's been quite quick introduction. An hour and a half is quite a quick way to learn how to code. It would be lovely if you could stay on in development, and if you found any interest in programming. It's a really good career. Thank you.
Amazing. All right. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed that, and thank you, Khumbo. That was amazing. Round of applause. So shortly after this, you'll get sent a survey just to ask you for your feedback on how you found this event. So we'd really appreciate it if you could give us your feedback. But yeah, I hope you've all enjoyed this, and thanks again, Khumbo and the team at Makers, and we'll be back for some more events, and check our events page on Coding Black Females for any other events that you may be interested in.
Yes, thank you so much. Bye.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Brilliant. Thanks. Bye.